Keeps talking on the bills book, Alan.
Thank you. Speaker today is Alan Soule. Alan, we were turned on to Alan by Lestig when he spoke to Home Remodelers Association. And the topic is around the world in 80 days in a Tesla. And Alan is born and raised in Berkeley and moved to Sebastopol in 1982, so that's where people go to. Bachelor's in mechanical engineering from UC Santa Barbara. For 2 years, helped establish and was operations manager for Zamil Soule Steel Buildings. And they had a big project in Saudi Arabia back in those days. Expanded the company, has been with it since, is retired now, but started in '73, converted an old Mercury Capri to run on propane. And I assume the clutch was good. They had a bad experience with the clutch. Leased the first GM EV1 vehicle, so bought a Tesla in 2008, is on a second one. So really experienced with the Tesla, and that's part of what we want to hear about. And because the questions are, how far can you get, how far can you go? So it's a fascinating story, I think you'll enjoy it. And Alan.
Well, let's all give Alan a Silver Brother Sunwise welcome.
Hey, do I do? Is there anything that we can do for you? Thanks for coming here today. We are with you all the way. How do you do, on speaker? How do you do?
Thank you very much for having me.
Joe, done with enthusiasm.
Okay, so in the summer of 2016, myself along with 10 others drove our electric vehicles around the world. And you sort of wondered, why would I do something like that? What I want to do, I've been an advocate for electric vehicles for several years now, and I want to show that you could drive them a long distance, and it couldn't get much further than around the world, we figured. So, and then I love to travel and adventure. I foresaw a lot of adventure in that drive, but what I didn't expect was meeting so many friendly people. I figured, well, especially maybe in Russia, you know, the Cold War and all that, might get some bad vibes from people there. Not a single bad experience with the people we interacted with. So it was really a pleasant experience overall. So what was ADE? This Spaniard named Rafael de Mestre came up with the idea of driving 100% electric vehicles around the world. It was a rally, not a race. You can't legally say that you're going to have a race on public streets. And then we also decided in our first meeting that we would all try and finish in the 80 days rather than see who could finish first. It was sort of a good thing. There were 2 young Germans that were part of the event, and they would have made it in 35 days with 0 hours of sleep, I'm sure. So anyway, we did that. As I say, there were 11 teams, and we took the 80 days from start to finish, including the ocean crossings. And actually that 80 days was effective. Virtually everywhere we went, people knew about the Jules Verne book, 80 Days Around the World. There were no support vehicles, so if we broke down somewhere along the way, we had to figure out what to do to keep going. And sponsors were okay, but they also didn't exist. Unfortunately, it was difficult to get a sponsor for our team. So everybody would wonder, where are we going to charge? If you look at the green in North America there, having a Tesla's got a charging network all across the country. It was probably easier than driving a gas car because you don't pay for the Tesla charging. So North America was not a problem at all. Europe, in the red there, they have public chargers. Unfortunately, Tesla has chargers there, but they're a different style than in North America, so I couldn't use those. But they do have public chargers, and I had an adapter to use those public chargers. But the challenge was most of Asia and then the western part of Spain and Portugal. And in those areas, it had to connect directly to an electrical panel, and I'll show you some photos of what that meant. So, I spent about 9 months solid preparing for this, not knowing exactly what I would need. And part of that preparation was getting adapters for any kind of electrical situation we might be faced with. And so that's what I had in the front of the car. And this was absolute necessity. It's a voltmeter, and every time we connected to any electrical panel, we had to check this. The Austrian team in one city in Russia didn't do that, and boom, their charger went out. So the electricity is actually fairly common in the rest of the world. It's different than in the US, but it varies, the voltage, the amount of voltage varies quite a bit. And so I had to ship my car over to Europe. In my case, I did it to the Netherlands. And the car got all the way there, and the truck bringing it from the port into the shipper's office, right when he made a turn inside the yard of the shipper, clipped the front of the truck and damaged the car. The body work didn't bother me too much, but it damaged the cooling system for the battery, which in the Tesla means you don't do anything. It's over. Fortunately, the Tesla has a facility in the Netherlands, and they took it there, and in one day they fixed both the bodywork and the battery cooling system. So I was very lucky with that, and had no trouble with it for the whole drive. So here we are. Being as the organizer was a Spaniard, we started in Barcelona at the Arc de Triomphe there on June 16th. And so we headed across Spain. Sorry, there are about dozens of stories on this trip, but with the limited time, I'm just going to hit some highlights. So we're going across Spain, and what I did to take advantage of the voltage and power situations in Europe and Asia, I rented this box there that everybody's leaning over and looking at. And at the time we were with the Swiss team, and he and I were trying to figure out, and some police stopped by, being as it's fairly unusual to see an electric car in Guarda, Portugal. And we were looking at it, we couldn't figure it out. They showed me quickly when I picked up the box in Switzerland, and I had forgotten how to do it. And as it turns out, the policeman was the one that finally figured out how to use the box. So while we were there, this fella drove by, and he doesn't have an electric car, but he's a real enthusiast. So he said, "You guys are charging at the wrong place. I need to take you to a better place where you can get a higher power charge." I said, "Okay, fine." Took us 20 miles out of the way to this fire station, and as it turns out, there was less power there than but what we got from him was a typical Portuguese meal. So he was nice. And actually, what's interesting, the fellow on the right here is a friend of mine who drove in Europe with me. And the nice thing is I stay in contact with that guy, and probably text with him every week or every 2 weeks, something like that. So we make it down to Lisbon and put the 10 cars on 767. As it turns out, 767 holds exactly 10 cars. So we took up most of the flight, drove across North America. Again, because of the time, I'm not going to show anything in North America. There wasn't a lot of unusual circumstances there. And then it made it over to China, where China was the only country where we had to get both a driver's license and a license plate for the car. So we're here in the driver's license bureau, and they sit us in front of this TV, and they say, "Okay, you're going to watch a video about how to drive in China." I said, "Okay, great." And for a while there, they had a cartoon on, and so everybody just sitting around checking their phone and so on. And then they came in and they said, "Okay, now go through those double doors back there to the other room." We said, "Well, wait a minute. We haven't seen the video yet." They said, "Yes, you have." And did that. Okay. So we got our license, that was very easy. But then we had to get a license plate. And to do that, you had to have a very thorough safety inspection of your car. And no joke, they really went through everything, the brakes, the turn signals, the lights, everything, to make sure they all worked well. So, then we hit the road in China. The young woman on the left was a woman that I met 3 or 4 years ago when I was traveling through China. Stayed in contact with her and asked her to be my co-driver in China. So, and she was fabulous in talking people into allowing us to connect to their electrical panel. I mean, can you imagine going to a tire shop, big old tire shop here and say, hey, do you mind if I go into your electrical panel and connect some wires to charge my car? I mean, it would be unheard of, but she was able to talk everywhere, hotels, tire shops, repair facilities. No one said no. Just walked in and it was great. So we found this detail shop, family run. That's the son, the father, the daughter, and the mother there. And they said no problem. And you'll notice, you see how it's dark in the background inside the shop there? Well, they only had 3 circuit breakers and they were all full. And he pointed, okay, use that one. And we took the wires off and all the lights went out in the shop. So there's a typical example. Ours is the orange one here that we made the connection with. And you'll see that the yellow and green one is the ground, and there just wasn't any place to connect that. So anyway, it worked out. No one got electrocuted. And I got a free car wash out of it too, so that was good. So this co-driver I had in China, as I said, I met her a few years ago, and we stayed in contact. I went to her wedding last December, and I thought she'd be good. She gets along with people. Of course, she speaks Chinese. Well, after I asked her, I thought, I better ask her, do you drive? And she said, nope, don't have a driver's license, never been behind the wheel before. So we were in a hotel parking lot that was wide open, so I let her try driving. First time she'd been behind the wheel of the car. So then one thing I'd done a lot of research about the climate that we were going to be faced with. I thought every day would be over 100 degrees going from central China through Kazakhstan and Russia. But as it turns out, we only had this one day, and the wires that we were using to feed the charging were undersized and they blew out. So we had to deal with that. And the heat had a lot to do with it. Here's what I had to do on the right here. This is an adapter to go from the type of power that was available into the car. And that's that same box that was in the Guarda, Portugal photo that I had to cool with a rag because it kept cutting out when it's over 100 degrees. So we get into western China. The Gobi Desert is just full of these wind generation mills and solar panels. I mean, you just see miles and miles of them. Then we get, okay, so here we're at the Kazakhstan-China border, and we had a little catch-22 here. We drove up, the border agents in Kazakhstan said, well, you have to take all of the things out of your car, everything, and go through customs, the building in the background there. And once you get through customs, you can't go back, cross back into China. Well, we said, wait a minute, how are we going to get our cars across? And so it literally took an hour of negotiating to figure out a plan. And they finally let the co-driver take the things through customs and let the driver stay on this side with the car and drive them across the other side. But it took an hour to figure that out. So the roads in Kazakhstan were the worst of the whole trip. It was constant, and I mean constant, going maybe 30 miles an hour, avoiding chuck holes. It was really something. Well, actually even worse than Sonoma County. I had done part of my preparation was making translations for a lot of languages to ask how we were going to get a charge or to request a charge in places like hotels and things. That didn't work. So we made this little sketch up, and surprisingly enough, everywhere we took it, when we put that in front of somebody, they understood what we needed, and it worked very well. So here's a typical one going into a hotel in Kazakhstan. So this one, see how this is a tire shop, the only area that I was very concerned about getting any power to charge. And unfortunately, we found this tire shop that was associated with a little restaurant and a little hotel. And as you can see, he was very happy to see the car there. It's just a one-bay shop, and he had me pull in there and we connected. But unfortunately, he went to a wedding that night, got drunk, and listened to a bunch of his friends, I'm sure, who said, hey, you can make some money on this. So at midnight, he comes back, wakes me up and says, hey, you got to give me the equivalent of $40, otherwise the power goes out. And I tried to negotiate with him. No, I didn't have any power at all. So, and as it turns out, I gave him the $40, and it's the only time I had to pay for charging on the whole trip. And the hotel was just a 5-room hotel, had one sink in it at the end of the hallway, and that was it. No other plumbing. And so that was our toilet. So this is a very typical scene in Kazakhstan and Russia in the steppe. It's basically the Great Plains of those two countries, except much larger.
The Silk Road went right through.
So another stop in Kazakhstan. Now these people had absolutely no idea we were coming. They had no idea we even existed. Well, we back in and show them a little sign. They understood, and immediately he goes and he gets a plug, connects it to our wires. We charge for 3 or 4 hours, in the way of their operation. No problem at all. When we finished the charge, I went to unscrew and take that plug off and give it back, and he said, no, just keep it. Very nice people, very nice. The capital of Kazakhstan was built relatively recently as the city that would be the capital of Kazakhstan. There's no other city like it in Kazakhstan, I'll tell you. Very modern looking and so on. Then we get to Russia. The Austrian team knew some people in the Russian electrical company called Rossetti, and they set up some panels for us at a few stops along the way. So that was helpful. At a different stop, it was Rossetti's 50th anniversary, and of course they wanted to get a photo in front of the American car. So that was odd. Moscow. One of my biggest regrets is you couldn't spend any time anywhere. Pulled into Moscow at 5 in the afternoon and left at 9 in the morning. That's why this is a night photo. So the church on the left and the Kremlin on the right there. So this fella, this is in Ukraine, and he got to talking with me about how he was from the Crimea in Ukraine, and they were so upset that the Russians were there. He said, and I can tell you, I'm from Sebastopol, and I can tell you that nobody in that area wants the Russians there. I said, you're from Sebastopol, huh? So I picked out my driver's license and showed him I was from Sebastopol, and he was instant friends after that. So then just getting into Europe, Romania, a very cute little town, Timișoara. Then Budapest, Hungary. The Hungarian team was very good about showing us around. And they already had the electric bus and treated us to dinner, a very nice dinner. They're the two, well, there's one of the Germans there, the young guy in the middle on the right there, real character. And then they let us drive their electric bus, so that was wonderful. Lunch, the Austrians treated to lunch on the Danube, then went through Prague. And okay, so this is the first and only time I've seen literally a charger on an island in a gas station. It was the only one, the rest were gas pumps. but it's sort of nice to see that they're treating up the charging as they would the gas. And then down in Italy, San Stefano, I charged by just plugging into the room socket in my propeller.
8 cars a day.
Stopped in Monaco, and then we finished in exactly 80 days. They even timed it. It was one very well organized part of the event. We left in a certain order, 5 minutes apart, in June, and returned in that same order, 5 minutes apart. So we all finished in 80 days, so no one could say, oh, I finished in ahead of them or anything. We all finished in exactly 80 days. So, sorry I ran through this, but I had to leave time for some questions, so I'll open it up to questions.
Did you happen to calculate how many hours of charging took place in the 80 days versus how many hours of driving took place in the 80 days?
Well, okay, so we charged every night, and at that we would charge just at a slow rate because we didn't need it fast, we were sleeping. So to answer your question, no. Typically we just, in Asia, not in Europe or North America, but in Asia, because it was slower charge connecting directly to the electrical panels, we would just have, we would drive in the morning with a full charge from the night before and have one charge during the day and then pull into a hotel that night. And the typical charge was probably, in Asia, was probably 4 hours, something like that. Yes?
How many participants did you have, and which models did the best overall, mechanically, electrically, etc.?
That's one thing. I thought for sure before I left, this car would be trashed when I got back. I thought I just turned it in for another car. But as it turns out, it's still as solid as it was new, and I have 100,000 miles on it. So I'm very, very happy with it. I didn't even take a spare tire, and so I really should do an advertisement for Michelin. But there were 10 car participants, and then the one bus. The bus didn't do the whole drive. The bus didn't go through Asia. But of the cars, there were 8 Tesla Model S's, 1 Tesla Roadster, and the Chinese team had Denza, which is a joint venture between Mercedes and BYD, a Chinese company. Actually, all of the Teslas held up pretty well. One of them had a broken suspension system going through Kazakhstan, and the Denza had a lot of charging issues. But outside of that, but by the way, everybody did finish, the 10 cars did finish in the 80 days. Yes.
Did you get any acknowledgement from Tesla on what it is?
Well, there's a long story about that, but the short answer is no.
How many total miles?
Well, okay, when you include driving from the Netherlands down to Barcelona and back, almost exactly 20,000 miles of driving. You know, of course, that doesn't include going over the ocean.
I really liked your logo, by the way.
Okay.
And my question is, are you going to do it again?
You know, I'd love to. On each of the visas I got, I requested the longest type of visa so I could go back. And there's a good chance that next summer I'll go across Asia. Europe, I've been there enough, but I'd like to spend more time in Asia. Yes.
So, I'm just doing the rough math, approximately 500 miles a day, driving miles a day?
Well, no, it depends. It was probably about 500 or 600 miles in North America. Europe was probably closer to 400, and we were extremely happy if we got 250 to 300 in Asia.
Was that back-to-back days? It must have been back-to-back days. Wasn't that just, how were you able to do that?
you know, it worked out. I didn't get sick. A few of the other teams did get sick.
And you had another driver helping, right?
Exactly, yeah. Yes.
So were you semi-caravan, or like if you left at the same time as you got, were you kind of groupings together?
Only in Western China, the government required that we drive together in Western China because they were afraid of the Uyghur population, basically, being a problem. But as it turns out, it wasn't an issue. We, in many other cities, we did meet up at night, but very rarely drove together.
Did you take some of the same routes?
Some of us did, and some of us didn't. Some of them went through the north, through Estonia and things, because it saved them the hassle of getting one visa, which I didn't quite understand. To me, it was a lot easier to get a visa than to drive 1,000 miles out of your way.
Did you carry any of your own food, or did you rely strictly on locally available?
All locally available. We did carry water, but no food.
I would like to thank you so
My
much.
pleasure. Oh, did you? Okay, I didn't know that was there.
And we have one last task for you. We have a raffle. And so we would like you to draw this ticket out of here. And the last four, 8214.
Marty?
Rich get richer.
And today's prize, consolation prize is from Lori Arnold.
Geritol. If it was Joe, it'd be Metamucil. No problem.
Okay, we are looking for,
That looked like when one day the car. What are you doing?
There's the shade of
Move that. Yes, I kicked it.
so there's two aces there.
Rotary International.
All right.
First round on Bruce Red. First round on you.
Marty Webb,
Uh-oh.
joke of the day.
Where's the mic? Need a mic. Where's the mic? Here it comes.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Turn it off.
Oh, it was on.
Green lights go, Marty.
There you go.
Went to the doctor the other day. He gave me 4 months to live, so I shot him. Judge gave me 20 years. Problem solved.
Okay, before we sing Happy Trails, you remember that when Brian and I were on our bike ride, we used to sing every morning? Well, I have it on good authority that Alan used to sing every morning to his favorite car. And remember the movie Around the World in 80 Days?
Yes.
It might have been in County Down, or near New York, or Gay Paris, or even London town. No more will I go all around the world, for I have found my world in you. He sung that to his Tesla. Joe, take us out.